small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. This is the evidence that God keeps a record. In that place between wakefulness and dreams, I found myself in the room. There were no distinguishing features, save for the one that covered the wall with small index card files. They were like the ones in libraries that listed titles by author or subject in alphabetical order. But these files, which stretched from floor to ceiling and seamlessly endless in either direction, had very different headings. As I drew near the wall of the files, the first to catch my attention was one that read, "Girls I Have Liked." I opened it and began flipping through the cards. I quickly shut it, shocked to realize that I recognized the names written on each one. And then, without being told, I knew exactly where I was. This lifeless room with its small files was a crude catalog system for my life. Here were written the actions of my every moment, big and small, in a detail my memory couldn't match. A sense of wonder and curiosity, coupled with horror, stirred within me as I began randomly opening files and exploring their contents. Some brought joy, and others sweet memories. Others a sense of shame and regret, so intense that I would look over my shoulder to see if anyone was watching. A file named Friends was next to one marked Friends I Have Betrayed. The titles ranged from the mundane to the outright weird. Books I have read, lies I have told, comfort I have given, jokes I have laughed at. Some were almost hilarious in their exactness, things I have yelled at my brothers. Others I couldn't laugh at, things I have muttered under my breath at my parents. I never ceased to be surprised by the contents. Often there were many more cards than I expected. Sometimes there were fewer than I had hoped. I was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the life I had lived. Could it be possible that I had the time in my 20 years to write each of these thousands, possibly millions of cards? But each card confirmed this truth. Each was written in my own handwriting, each signed with my own signature. When I pulled out the file marked Songs I Have Listened to, I realized the files grew to contain their contents. The cards were packed tightly, and yet after 2 or 3 yards, I hadn't found the end of the file. I shut it, shamed not so much by the quality of music, but more by the vast amount of time I knew the file represented. When I came to a file marked Lustful Thoughts, I felt a chill run through my body. I pulled the file out only an inch, not willing to test its size, and drew out a card. I shuddered at its detailed contents. I felt sick to think that such a moment had been recorded. Suddenly, I felt almost an animal rage One thought dominated my mind. No one must ever see these cards. I have to destroy them. In insane frenzy, I yanked the file out. Its size didn't matter now. I had to empty it and burn the cards. But as I took the file at one end and began pounding it on the floor, I could not dislodge a single card. I became desperate and pulled out a card, only to find it as strong as steel when I tried to tear it. Defeated and utterly helpless, I returned the file to its slot, leaning my forehead against the wall. I let out a long, self-pitying sigh, and then I saw it. The title bore, People I Have Shared the Gospel With. The handle was brighter than those around it, newer and almost unused. I pulled on its handle, and a small box, not more than 3 inches long, fell into my hands. I counted the cards it contained on one hand, and then the tears came. I began to weep. Sobs so deep that they hurt started in my stomach and shook through me. I fell on my knees and cried. I cried out of shame, from the overwhelming shame of it. The rows of file shells swirled in my tear-filled eyes, and no one must ever, ever know of this room. I must lock it up and hide the key. But then, as I pushed away the tears, I saw him. No, please not him. Not here. Oh, anyone but Jesus. I watched helplessly as he began to open the files and read the cards. I couldn't bear to watch his response, and in the moments I could bring myself to look at his face, I saw a sorrow deeper than my own. He seemed to intuitively go to the worst boxes. Why did he have to read every one? Finally, he turned and looked at me from across the room. He looked at me with pity in his eyes, but this pity did not anger me. I dropped my head, covered my face with my hands, and began to cry again. He walked over and put his arm around me. He could have said so many things, but he didn't say a word. He just cried with me. Then he got up and he walked back to the wall of files. Starting at one end of the room, he took out a file and one by one began to sign his name over mine. I shouted, rushing to him. All I could find was to say. As I pulled out the card from him, his name shouldn't be on these cards, but here it was, written in red so rich, so dark, and so alive. The name of Jesus covered mine. It was written with his blood. He gently took the card back, and he smiled a sad smile and continued to sign the cards. I don't think I'll ever understand how he did it so quickly, but the next instant, it seemed, I heard him close the last file and walk by my side. He placed his hand on my shoulder and said, I stood up, and he led me out of the room. There was no lock on its door, and there were cards still to be written.